When John stood up here in his usual contrived casualness and said, when Vernon stands up here and goes into his act, the very phrasing of it in that way was contemptuous. And when you make remarks like that, you're going to hear from me. Now on to the other gentleman in question. This has been going on for many, many years, and I've kept an eye on it for many, many years, and will continue to do so. Under certain circumstances, when certain conditions come up, it is good and necessary to come right out with what you know. Come right out into the room, as you saw it happen last time, to warn certain ones of you against the evil of another person in this room, and the next time it might be someone else. Might not be just that man. What was going on through you when all this was going on out there? Weren't you kind of sitting back and watching and knowing that this is the way people always have been? All this hostility. Don't you know that you're loaded with hostility right now? You're just showing good manners now. Even the most meek and mild appearing of you, you could blow up the town, couldn't you? With your wrath. And your polite behavior toward me doesn't fool me. The reason you're polite is because you're scared. And anyone who's polite because he's scared can flip-flop over to the opposite. And you do internally, whether you're aware of it or not. But there is one difference. You know, way down deep, that what you're hearing here is true. And if a part of you is beginning to be right, then it remembers that, and then it doesn't yield to the contemptuous remark or feeling, because it knows it has to be sacrificed. Yes, Larry?
If I may say so, you said what was going on within us when the John ordeal. Sitting next to him, alongside of the chair, and him being a large man, his arms began to flail. The big elbow came at my face, where I physically put up my arm to keep from being hit with the elbow.
How many of you are capable of physical violence under the, quote, right circumstances? Shaking someone, actually assaulting them, slapping at them or something. Physical violence is the animal level, you know. This is what animals do to each other. All they know is physical violence. Go ahead, Phil.
I don't know most of the negativities that are inside of me. They're hidden. I really don't know them. And there's nothing I can do about them until I see them. Yesterday morning you gave me a shock, and I saw something. And anytime you give anybody in this class a shock, they have to use it and work with it. How are we ever going to be sane if we don't know what's making us insane?
Right. Go ahead, Tom.
To follow Phyllis, in Wednesday night's talk about the king who sent the food to the people stranded in one part of the country, you also said in that talk that we have to see the parts of us that are hostile toward Vernon. And I see those very clearly. And I'm just going to pursue Phyllis's theme. I'm going to keep coming here until those things are no longer a part of me. As shocking as it is to see it, it is there. There are dark things in us.
Okay. One more, then we'll continue. Two more. Yes, sir.
The relationship, what you're talking about of having fear towards you, there is a small part, a very small part in me that knows that what you're saying is the truth, and it's afraid of the other part in me that if the other part acts up, you would be, well, you'd kick me out. So there is the fear. And until that evil part is dissipated, that's what does keep me back from approaching you.
You know, the fear of being kicked out itself is a wrong part of you. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
The fear of being kicked out, because is fear ever right? See?
No, that's right.
But that's much deeper than on the surface. Go ahead, Mark.
In relation to Dorothy's comment, I felt that it was being drug on too much too. And then right after that, I saw that I was insecure because things weren't going the way I wanted them to. They were different, and it was bringing up fear in me. So I watched and tried to drop that.
The task of a man who goes into a lunatic asylum to cure the inmates, his first task, and the only sensible task, is to let the inmates know that they are insane. Don't treat them as if they're sane. Don't talk to them as if they're sane, or they'll begin to believe the role of being sane, and they'll let loose and go out and hurt the world. How are you different inwardly than you are in your public appearances before people? Isn't there quite a difference between the way you appear to be and what you actually are? Any exercises we have, and it was an exercise, like we had last Sunday, is very valuable for this class. And there's a certain awareness in a number of people here who were here Sunday who saw the whole incident, which was really very mild. Don't exaggerate it, for heaven's sake. Very mild. There's a certain awareness in some of you who now are a little bit stronger than you were before then. Any of you just try to get away with it. You're wasting your time trying to tempt me subtly, overtly. Anyway, you're wasting your time. And the smallest bad behavior will be caught. Not that a lot of it doesn't get by, because we'd be stopping every 3 minutes. But certain selective bad behaviors will be called on the spot for the sake of the person doing it and for the rest of you in this class. There really is no doubt in any of your minds, none of you, there's no doubt in your minds at all as to who's in charge of this class on the human level. I know that, and you know it. There's no doubt at all in your mind. But every once in a while, a certain part of you, some of you, likes to leap out and make a stab at seeing what would happen if you behave like a small little child. That will not be dealt with easily. And when it's all over, if you have come here rightly, you'll go out of that door, not knowing you're doing this, of course, but you'll take a deep breath. And a right part of you will say, thank heaven that other part didn't get away with it. I was afraid that it might have. You want to test me? You go ahead and see what happens. See, for the sake of the right parts of you. Okay. Go ahead, Phyllis.
There's no reason for rudeness on any level.
Right. Jean, go ahead.
To really get rid of the devil, you might have to be rude, though, if that's all they know to hear.
Oh, I didn't mean that.
A rudeness, now look, let's be careful. I think Phyllis caught something there. When you're rude, you are involved with your own darkness. A rude person always hurts himself. There's a state in which you're very firm, and you're not a part of any self-destruction of yourself at the time. Now, I know very well, John was standing here, and he made his remark about, well, Vernon goes into his act, which, by the way, is an act itself, John. This contrived casualness of yours. Vernon goes into his act like that. That won't be tolerated. And the minute you did that, you knew it was wrong. It's my duty to call it to your attention that you were doing a wrong thing. All right, we'll start with something else. We could go on all evening otherwise. Basically, there are 5 steps to sanity and certainty. And I'm going to outline those 5 steps to you in detail tonight, so that you can see the process by which you can go through all 5 of them and end up with authentic and everlasting sanity and certainty. This is the whole story of what you're going to hear tonight, of how anyone ever finds the way out. The first stage is the one which you experience when you come into this world. And as you begin to grow, begin to be 2 years old, 3 years old, 5 years old, 10 years old, already by the time you're very young, this first stage, which you're born into, is manifesting itself. And that stage, as you well know from your own remembrance, is one in which you are always right. Your demands are the only demands that should exist. No matter what the subject or the event or the experience, what you want to do, what you want to say, what you want to get out of it, is the only thing that counts. The whole world then is your enemy if it thwarts a petty or a major desire. In other words, you think you are right. The fact that you have to suffer a good deal, that you have to suffer physically sometimes, the fact that you have to keep fighting for what you want, all the opposition never gets the lesson through the head that we're not right, but this is the stage we're in. We insist I am right and everyone else is wrong. How convenient. Now I've got it all figured out, all settled down. No matter what it is, if you cross me, I can get mad and call you wrong and me right. This is the stage, this very first stage, in which the whole world has settled, with few exceptions. Everyone in the world, from the leaders of the earth to the housewives to the mechanics to everyone, have hardened in the preliminary stage, I am right. No matter what you say to me, I know. This is an obvious stage, isn't it? Some people, through blows to their life, through sorrows, through disappointments, through great suffering, through unexplained experiences, through great mysterious events in their lives inwardly, they don't know what's going on. Some people go to the second step. And the second step is to doubt their former rightness. I've always been right. I know all the answers. If I want a raise, that's all that counts. Give me the raise. I want that woman. That's all that matters. I want that woman. I want you to please me, to flatter me, to tell me that I'm worthy of your company or whatever. All these rightnesses, which I call virtues, by the way, are beginning to be questioned by me. I'm calling them into doubt because I am forced to do so. I don't want to. Because I'd rather be right all the time than question whether I'm right or not. Because there's no doubt about it. When I'm right about everything, that settles my identity. I'm the ruler of my own little world, and you don't conform to it, then your world is false. Second stage, through great unexpected events, shocks, blows, a man or a woman begins to question his rightness. The hardness of the first stage, which is indeed very hard, like a steel block, that hardness is beginning to melt down. Cold block of ice, put it that way. Hard, cold block of ice. But I can't keep it in place anymore. As much as I want to continue to believe that I'm right and you're wrong. There it is. I'm right and you're wrong. How easy life becomes, how simple. There's no doubts about that. And something, but I don't know what it is forcing me away from this absolute position where everything was safe, secure. When I'm right, that's all there is to it. I don't like this stage. It's very uncomfortable, but I have no place to go. I can't go back to it. I can't believe I'm right anymore. And so I begin to believe that I'm wrong. This is the third stage. First was I was right. The second, I begin to question it. And then I begin to wonder about this wrongness of mine. First I was right, then I question the rightness, and I see all these horrible things inside me. I see how cruel I've been, how insistent, how petty I am, how insistent on my right. And I begin to harden, listen to this please, I begin to harden into a third position where I am wrong, and I want to believe in that. I want now, before I believed in my rightness, now I want to believe in my wrongness. Now I'll tell you what happens to anyone who hardens in this stage. He becomes a penitent sinner. He turns religious. He might even turn to be a minister of some kind. Or he goes around preaching rightness. I was a former sinner, now I'm right. He believes in his wrongness, but he's just as wrong now as when he was right. You understand that?
Yes.
Right. And this wrongness becomes very valuable to him, and he can express it in small ways as well as large ways, admitting to small faults maybe, saying, well, nobody's perfect. In other words, he tries to make himself as comfortable as possible, having the new assignment of himself, assigned to himself, of being a wrong person. When you're wrong, you're also pretty humble, huh? You're not proud and arrogant like you used to be when you insisted you were right. Now you're a pretty nice person. You've changed. And they often use all sorts of religious phrases invented for the occasion, being born again, maybe. I've just been talking for a few minutes, and already I've gone to stages where few human beings fear to tread, but we're going to go a little farther. The next one, the fourth one. Now, remember he questioned his rightness? Now he questions his wrongness. Ooh. What a leap. I wonder if there have been 10 men in the history of civilization who's ever gone this far. Look, he was hardened in his position of rightness, doubted it, went to a position of wrongness, and here's where most people stop if they even go this far. I will ask you here now whether you can begin to doubt the value of you being a sinner. I wonder whether you are willing to give up being a wrong person. I wonder if you are willing to give up feeling guilty over being so evil. See? I know what's happening now, because I know it has to happen. I know the evasions that are going in all of you now, of which you're unconscious. If you could watch the reactions of your whole system as I'm talking, you would be able to catch yourself right at this stage right now. in which you have called yourself bad and evil and don't want to give it up. Can you now then, we'll do some work here right as I'm talking, can you now begin to question the necessity, the validity, the accuracy of being a bad person? Now let's use simple words. You know what it means to be bad. It means to hurt other people, to hurt yourself, to lie about yourself in an endless way. Can you go so far in a very small way tonight and not believe in your own wrongness? Fifth step, and the last one. There's no way you can judge yourself as being right or being wrong, being good or being evil, because there's no thought left to judge in either of the opposites. All the credentials you had given yourself, first being intelligent, being on the way in life, being successful, all imagination, of course. Then later, all the credentials you gave yourself of being someone who's not ashamed to admit his mistakes, who's not ashamed to admit that he's been wrong all these years. I'll tell you, it was pretty hard for me to admit that I was wrong for 30 or 40 years, but I finally did it. You still are wrong. If you get to the last stage, and you know the phrases we've used before, where there's nothing to call yourself either good or bad, where there's no self-reference at all, where there's no person there who is evil, who is good, who is halfway between, no person who even fluctuates between good and bad. Remember that. There's no person who fluctuates, who goes back and forth between good and bad. See, right now, you kind of balance things up and say, well, I'm not doing too bad. Of course I was hateful toward my neighbor this morning. But, you know, later on that day, to my other neighbor on the other side, I gave him some cupcakes. So I guess that cancels out. So I'm reasonably okay, I guess. Can you picture the state then where you have no credentials toward yourself at all? Where you're not trying to live up to anything. You don't have to live up to anything. There's no one there to live up to. There's no one to please. And if there's no one in here to please, get this and sigh with relief if you want. There's no one out there to please. Because there is no pleaser, no fawner inside looking out and wondering how you're going to keep that person in your life, or how you're going to make that sale, or how you're going to feel the security of having your family or other people around, or your club. Now I'll tell you about real credentials, not these phony ones, these self-given credentials which are false. Real credentials. You know what credentials are? There's something you carry around, documents, papers you carry around. And you show them to people, and they let you in the building, or they let you buy the fruit or whatever. Credentials, it'll admit you into something. You can go to the foreign embassy or whatever. Papers that you carry around that say that you are an authentic representative of this or that. Well, it does so happen that God, truth, has representatives on earth. And what beautiful, marvelous credentials. First of all, they're invisible. Secondly, they can't be revoked. Third, they're with you all the time. wherever you go, you've got them. I was thinking of a illustration as I was driving down. Suppose there was a town, we'll call it Petty Town. And Petty Town was filled with petty people with petty minds and petty ambitions. And it was filled with contradictory laws. One office in the same building contradicting another office in the same building, driving the people mad who go to try to have matters straightened out, which is typical of human situations. Endless petty laws keeping the people in Petty Town enslaved. And of course, you understand the people living there don't understand that they passed those laws. They permitted those laws to be passed because they wanted an advantage over this law. Then the person on the opposite side got to come back with their law, and now you're hooked. Now it's their turn for a law, now their turn for a law, until everybody is caught in the whole madness of it. And nobody will take responsibility. It's always the other person's fault, right? And everybody crabs, everybody complains, everybody screams as to the tyranny of life. And no one has any honesty to see that they, through their stopping at the first point one of believing in their own goodness, they never see that they are responsible for where they are now. But anyway, a king comes to town. And everybody knows that he's a king. And this town, Petty Town, is a part of his kingdom. And when he comes in his royal coach, and the 6 horses and the guards around him and all that, all the people on the edge of the streets bow respectfully, and they remain silent. When the king comes to Petty Town,